I cited are not hypothetical. President Trump pardoned a former Army officer, Clint Lawrence, who was convicted of murder by a jury of his peers for taking these very actions against non-combatants. In 2012, Lawrence ordered his soldiers to fire upon 3 unarmed Afghan men, killing 2 and wounding a 3rd. Lawrence was known to act with impunity. He pointed his weapon at a young child, ordered soldiers to fire from a tower in the general direction.
What happens if the commander-in-chief orders American troops to commit an illegal act? That chilling question landed in the United States Senate when Senator Tammy Duckworth confronted Lieutenant General Francis Donovan about the limits of military obedience. The exchange was not political theater. It was about whether the guardrails of the Constitution can survive pressure from any president. If you value clear, independent reporting that breaks down moments like this, subscribe to the channel and stay with us.
Thank you very much, Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do echo my colleagues' concern that President Trump is marching us towards another forever war in Venezuela and throwing around threats to do the same elsewhere, from Greenland to Colombia to Iran. After 23 years of service in the Army myself, the lessons that I learned as a young lieutenant about the professionalism and code of conduct and ethics of military officers remain with me to this day. I know firsthand the cost in blood that service members and their families suffer when an administration like this one uses military force based on a flimsy pretext. This administration has come up with very questionable legal justifications what they're doing. They've untethered to any real national security threat with no realistic planning about what comes next. The administration says that it's all about warfighters, but we all know that it is fast to betray our warfighters. As we saw with the hearing on domestic deployments that I secured in December, President Trump is comfortable thrusting service members into legally unprecedented situations and leaving them out there to dry without legal protection. In Southcom, this administration's leaders have created questionable legal justifications for the use of military force. They've thrown military commanders under the bus instead of admitting that they likely ordered a war crime, and sidelined critical legal advisors. In fact, the very real reason that we're here today is because the former commander of Southcom, Admiral Halsey, was asked by SecDef Hegseth to step down after he expressed concerns over the, and I quote, murky legality of the boat strike campaign, end quote, according to the Wall Street Journal. General Donovan, I'm concerned about how this administration might ask you to do what they might ask you to do in this role, given what they asked your predecessor to do. And I want to understand how you would navigate that in a way that would safeguard your oath to the American people and to uphold the Constitution by protecting responsible American use of force and protecting the service members under your command. If ordered by the Secretary to shoot unarmed civilians with no observable weapons who were not presenting any hostile acts of hostile intent, would you relay that order down to your chain of command?
No, Senator.
Thank you. Let's do another example. If ordered by the Secretary of Defense to shoot harassing fire into a city or a village indiscriminately where we are not actively engaged in hostilities, would you issue that order to your subordinates?
Senator, I believe the hypothetical aspect of that question, I have to identify that that is a very significant, serious question that I take to heart. For the fact that the detail and the planning process to get to a point where one of those very hard decisions have to be made, that's a significant effort. A commander-led process in planning to ensure that all aspects of the operation take consideration, to include the legal advice of the legal counsel on that planning staff. My responsibility is to lead that planning staff. I don't believe that that situation you described, Senator, would be something that would happen out of the blue. The conditions had been set. The leaders have been given the authority, the rules of engagement to understand their rules. And I can't commit or comment on a situation that I did not plan, participate in to get to that point of the point of decision that you're referencing, Senator.
I think this is a pretty straightforward answer. Let me try a more straightforward answer. Do you agree there would be a crime in international law under the Geneva Conventions for the United States military to conduct violence toward persons who are taking no active part in hostilities or have laid down their arms?
Senator, again, I would like to really better understand the situation that is being laid out here in the staff planning process that got there to that position before we'd have to make that very hard decision.
Okay. Well, I'm really troubled by that answer because the specific examples I cited are not hypothetical. President Trump pardoned a former Army officer, Clint Lawrence, who was convicted of murder by a jury of his peers for taking these very actions against non-combatants. In 2012, Lawrence ordered his soldiers to fire upon 3 unarmed Afghan men, killing 2 and wounding a 3rd. Lawrence was known to act with impunity. He pointed his weapon at a young child, ordered soldiers to fire from a tower in the general direction of villagers, and lied about receiving hostile fire, and even instructed one of his soldiers to falsify a report after the murders. And this is a man that SecDef Hegseth calls a good guy. These are the types of disturbing, lawless actions that the SecDef and the president regularly glorify. Trump has bandied the term hero to describe the likes of Eddie Gallagher, who posed with the body of a deceased teenager and who his fellow Iraq veterans said was, quote, okay with killing anything that moved, end quote. Let's be clear. President Trump is creating a climate in our military where lawlessness is rewarded, not punished. A climate where it is even realistic for me to ask you, what would you do if the President's Secretary ordered actions that amount to war crimes? And it disturbs me that you could not answer those last 2 questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Duckworth, a combat veteran who lost both legs flying a Black Hawk helicopter in Iraq, opened with a warning. She said the current administration is pushing the nation toward another endless conflict, this time with talk of military action in Venezuela and threats aimed at Greenland, Colombia, and Iran. Drawing on 23 years in uniform, she reminded the room that the military code of conduct is built on law, ethics, and the painful lessons written in blood by service members and their families. Her concern, she explained, is that recent decisions appear untethered from real national security threats. She argued that leaders are offering shaky legal justifications while failing to plan for what comes after the first missile is fired. According to Duckworth, the same officials who claim to champion warfighters have a record of abandoning them when politics turns. She referenced a hearing she secured on domestic troop deployments, saying soldiers are being placed in unprecedented legal situations without clear protections. In the Southern Command, she added, commanders have been pushed aside for raising alarms about the legality of proposed strikes. The previous commander reportedly stepped down after warning that a campaign of attacks rested on murky legal ground. That background set up the core of her questioning. Duckworth asked Donovan directly, if the Secretary of Defense ordered you to shoot unarmed civilians showing no hostile intent, would you pass that order down the chain of command? Donovan answered with a single word, no. For Duckworth, those were not academic hypotheticals. She reminded the committee of former Army officer Clint Lawrence, convicted of murder for ordering soldiers to fire on unarmed Afghan men. 2 were killed, 1 wounded. Evidence showed Lawrence pointed a weapon at a child, ordered random fire toward villagers, and falsified reports. President Trump later pardoned him, and senior officials described him as a good guy. The senator connected that pardon to a broader pattern, including praise for Eddie Gallagher, a Navy SEAL photographed with the body of a dead teenager whose own comrades said he was willing to kill anything that moved. In her view, these actions send a message that lawlessness is rewarded while discipline is mocked. Subscribe and join a community that believes history deserves context, not slogans. At the heart of the exchange lies a principle older than the Republic. Soldiers swear an oath to the Constitution, not to any individual. International law, from the Geneva Conventions to the Uniform Code of Military Justice, makes clear that unlawful orders must be refused. Yet the pressure of hierarchy can blur those lines, especially when political leaders glorify figures convicted of war crimes. Experts note that modern warfare increasingly takes place in crowded cities where distinguishing combatants from civilians is difficult. That reality makes legal guidance more important, not less. When senior advisors are sidelined, the risk of catastrophic mistakes grows. Duckworth's frustration reflected a fear shared by many veterans that young troops could be placed in impossible positions and later left to carry the blame alone. The general's cautious answers also reveal the culture of the military. Commanders are trained to rely on process, to consult lawyers, and to avoid public confrontation with civilian leaders. But the law does not allow obedience as a defense for atrocities. The Nuremberg Principles were written precisely to prevent that excuse. The debate will not end with one nomination hearing. Congress must decide how to oversee the use of force, how to protect whistleblowers, and how to ensure that pardons do not erase the difference between heroism and crime. For families who send loved ones into uniform, those questions are personal. Duckworth closed by saying she was disturbed that such questions even needed to be asked. The climate, she argued, has shifted to a place where war crimes can be discussed as options on a menu. Whether the nation accepts that shift or rejects it will shape the character of the military for a generation. Subscribe to follow continuing coverage as this story develops.